of the AfterSessions, Zheng, the Dragon Lady.
Cannon smoke hung over the water, black sails broke the horizon, silhouettes marked by scars and eye patches. Ships vanished without a trace, and rules didn't even exist. The sea was no neutral ground, it was governed. The largest pirate fleet in history didn't belong to a king or an empire, it belonged to her.
In a world where women were meant to be pushed to the shore, she ruled the sea. Where history tried to wash women out of power, she stayed afloat and then began to command the tide itself. The ocean did not drown her, it obeyed her.
This isn't the story of rebellion or chaos. It's a story of a psychological mastery, of someone who understood how fear, structure, loyalty, and survival interact and use that understanding to build order where none existed. When the world had no rules, she didn't break them. Zheng Yi wrote her own.
Zheng Yi was born in 1775, in a time and place where poor girls rarely left a trace in the historical record. Her early years unfolded on the water, not as a pirate, not yet, but in the cramped, dangerous world of a floating brothel. It was a place where power shifted hour to hour, where safety depended on how quickly you could read a face, interpret a tone, sense a threat before it arrived.
And that environment wasn't just her background, it was her training ground. Psychologically, places like that force the brain into hyper-attunement. You learn to watch everything, the conversations behind you, the footsteps outside the door, the moods of the men who walk in. Emotional control, strategic silence, negotiation, these weren't traits she discovered later. They were survival tools she built young, in a world that required precision just to stay alive.
Long before she commanded ships, she was mastering people. She learned who lied, who postured, who could be manipulated, and who presented real danger. What later looked like genius naval strategy was rooted in these early lessons: trained instinct, sharpened observation, and almost surgical understanding of human motives. And it was precisely this combination of awareness and intelligence that caught the attention of the pirate captain Zheng Yi, a man who understood power when he saw it.
When she married him in 1801, it wasn't a rescue or a love story. It was a partnership, a calculated alignment between a rising pirate lord and a woman who had spent her life studying how power worked up close. Zheng Yi didn't stumble into piracy. She stepped into it with the psychological toolkit of someone who had already spent years navigating danger. Her early life didn't just shape her, it engineered the commander she would become.
After her marriage to the powerful pirate Zheng Yi, Sao helped her husband by being an organizer and consolidator for the pirates, and they worked to unify small gangs into a confederation that eventually included 70,000 men. When he died in 1807 after falling overboard in a storm, the fleet didn't collapse. Sao took control of it for herself. She made Zheng Bao her adopted son with Yi and his protege her second in command. At some point, they became husband and wife. She introduced an ironclad pirate code, absolute obedience, and the punishment for those who failed to follow was automatic decapitation. If a man had a wife, he was supposed to be faithful, or else he would be put to death. In unstable systems, clarity creates security, and security breeds loyalty.
This aligns with authoritarian leadership theory. Identified by psychologist Kurt Lewin as one of three primary leadership styles, this theory talks about centralized control where one leader makes all the decisions with no input from subordinates. But unlike impulsive tyrants, Zheng Yi paired fear with consistency. Rules applied to everyone. No unpredictability, no exceptions. Although the code was severe, she made sure to keep the pirates happy as well. One of these methods was ensuring stolen treasure was divided up fairly. 20% of the goods were allotted to those seizing them, and the rest was put into communal treasures. She also had additional revenue sources by having ships pay her and her pirates fees to not be attacked.
Because Sao was so powerful, the Chinese Navy did not have the money or manpower to stop pirate attacks. It tried many times to stop Sao's fleet, but was unsuccessful. In 1822, Bao died. Sao moved with her 11-year-old son to raise him in her hometown, and she continued to live her life where she ran a gambling den. She died at the age of 69 in 1844 due to natural causes, an ordinary end to an extraordinary figure.
Zheng Sao rose in a world that had already decided what women could be, and she ignored every word of it. Her power didn't come from permission, lineage, or appearance. It came from sheer effectiveness. Every move she made chipped away at the assumptions of her time, not by defiance alone, but by competence so undeniable it rewrote the rules beneath her feet.
And that's exactly where legitimacy theory enters the story. Real authority isn't granted by identity, it's earned by performance. Zheng Yisao understood that better than any scholar ever could. She gave her fleet stability, predictable laws, shared profits, and actual protection. Things no government or empire around them offered with such consistency. People didn't follow her because she was a woman or despite it. They followed her because under her command, they survived.
What's striking is that she never tried to fit into the existing scripts of power. She didn't soften herself to match expectations of femininity, and she didn't mimic the violent bravado of male warlords. She simply operated outside that spectrum entirely. Her authority was behavioral, a product of discipline, strategy, and outcomes. In her world, power wasn't symbolic, it was functional, and she mastered it by changing the very definition of leadership.
Analyzing Zheng Sao psychologically, she demonstrates high executive function, which helped her adapt to her surroundings and crew. There's also clear Machiavellian intelligence used here, a term coined and popularized by primatologists Richard Bryan and Andrew Whiten. Machiavellian intelligence is the smart and cunning ability to manipulate people and situations for personal gain, using tactics like deception, flattery, and strategic cooperation or conflict, all to get ahead socially or achieve goals.
This is usually seen in primates, dolphins, and elephants. Sao used techniques like emotional detachment, long term manipulation, and control without spectacle. Violence was never emotional, it was procedural. And perhaps most striking, she wasn't addicted to power. Her dominance was instrumental, not ego driven. That psychological restraint kept her from self destruction, something most leaders never escape.
Her biggest moment in global popular culture came when she inspired the fierce and unforgettable Mistress Zheng in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. In a film series packed with legendary captains and mythical pirates, Mistress Zheng stood out, a silent nod to the real-life power, strategy, and dominance of the historical pirate queen herself. Through that character, her legacy didn't just survive. It sailed straight into the global imagination, reaching millions who may never have heard her name, but felt her impact on screen.
Her story forces us to rethink what authority actually looks like. Is power about domination or about understanding human behavior so precisely that domination becomes optional? Zheng Sao ruled people who could abandon her at any moment, yet chose not to. That wasn't luck, that was psychological mastery.
We are confronting uncomfortable truths about control, leadership, and survival, and about how often the most enduring power is built not through noise, but through systems that people believe in, fear, and follow. In studying her, we aren't just uncovering the life of a pirate queen.
The strongest power is rarely the storm. It's the deep water beneath it, dark as ink, patient as the tide, swallowing ships and reshaping shores without ever being seen. A power that moves like a legend whispered between sailors. Because some forces don't crash like waves. They pull like tides.